Getting the cloud experience outside the public cloud isn't just wishful thinking. It's HPE GreenLake, bringing the cloud experience to your apps and data, even the ones that can't go to public cloud, letting you consume everything as a service. So you can focus on innovation and delivering new experiences to your customers. Together, we determine what workloads you need, give you just the capacity you need to get started, and give you the power to add more with a click, while you pay as you go for it all. No over-provisioning, no underutilization. HPE GreenLake works with everyone you work with. This one, that one, pretty much all the ones. HPE GreenLake brings the cloud experience to you with agility, control, and speed in a single window. Clouds, edges, data centers, unified. Plus experts who can manage everything so you can innovate more. And get to market faster, up to 65% faster, while developers can deploy without constraints. To launch the next app or the next big thing. You can't get this from imitators. You can only get it from HPE, the partner that's been doing it for a decade. For a cloud experience 99% of customers are staying with, just GreenLake it. So let's rewind. Get everything as a service, pay as you go, add capacity with a click, and have it managed for you. That's the cloud experience brought to your apps and data. Experience HPE GreenLake.
We are entering an age of insight, where data moves freely between environments to work together, powerfully from wherever it lives. A new era driven by next-generation cloud services. It's freedom that accelerates innovation and digital transformation. But it's only for those who dare to propel their business toward a new future that pushes beyond the usual barriers, to a place that unites all information under a fluid yet consistent operating model across all your applications and data, to a place called HPE GreenLake. HPE GreenLake pushes beyond the obstacles and limitations found in today's infrastructure, because application entanglements, data gravity, security, compliance, and cost issues simply aren't solved by current cloud options. Instead, HPE GreenLake is the cloud that comes to you, bringing with it increased agility, broad visibility, and open governance across your entire enterprise. This is digital transformation unlocked, incompatibility solved, data decentralized, and insights amplified. For those thinkers, makers, and doers who want to create on the fly, scale up or down with a single click, stand up new ideas without risk, and view it all as a single, agile system of systems. HPE GreenLake is here, and all are invited.
Getting the cloud experience outside the public cloud isn't just wishful thinking. It's HPE GreenLake, bringing the cloud experience to your apps and data, even the ones that can't go to public cloud, letting you consume everything as a service. So you can focus on innovation and delivering new experiences to your customers. Together, we determine what workloads you need, give you just the capacity you need to get started, and give you the power to add more with a click, while you pay as you go for it all. No over-provisioning, no underutilization. HPE GreenLake works with everyone you work with. This one, that one, pretty much all the ones. HPE GreenLake brings the cloud experience to you with agility, control, and speed in a single window. Clouds, edges, data centers, unified. Plus experts who can manage everything so you can innovate more. And get to market faster, up to 65% faster, while developers can deploy without constraints. To launch the next app or the next big thing. You can't get this from imitators. You can only get it from HPE, the partner that's been doing it for a decade. For a cloud experience 99% of customers are staying with, just GreenLake it. So let's rewind. Get everything as a service, pay as you go, add capacity with a click, and have it managed for you. That's the cloud experience brought to your apps and data. Experience HPE GreenLake.
We are entering an age of insight, where data moves freely between environments to work together, powerfully from wherever it lives. A new era driven by next-generation cloud services. It's freedom that accelerates innovation and digital transformation. But it's only for those who dare to propel their business toward a new future that pushes beyond the usual barriers, to a place that unites all information under a fluid yet consistent operating model across all your applications and data, to a place called HPE GreenLake. HPE GreenLake pushes beyond the obstacles and limitations found in today's infrastructure because application entanglements, data gravity, security, compliance, and cost issues simply aren't solved by current cloud options. Instead, HPE GreenLake is the cloud that comes to you, bringing with it increased agility, broad visibility, and open governance across your entire enterprise. This is digital transformation unlocked, incompatibility solved, data decentralized, and insights amplified. For those thinkers, makers, and doers who want to create on the fly, scale up or down with a single click, stand up new ideas without risk, and view it all as a single, agile system of systems. HPE GreenLake is here, and all are invited.
Getting the cloud experience outside the public cloud isn't just wishful thinking. It's HPE GreenLake, bringing the cloud experience to your apps and data, even the ones that can't go to public cloud, letting you consume everything as a service. So you can focus on innovation and delivering new experiences to your customers. Together, we determine what workloads you need, give you just the capacity you need to get started, and give you the power to add more with a click, while you pay as you go for it all. No over-provisioning, no underutilization. HPE GreenLake works with everyone you work with. This one, that one, pretty much all the ones. HPE GreenLake brings the cloud experience to you with agility, control, and speed in a single window. Clouds, edges, data centers, unified. Plus experts who can manage everything so you can innovate more. And get to market faster, up to 65% faster, while developers can deploy without constraints. To launch the next app or the next big thing. You can't get this from imitators. You can only get it from HPE, the partner that's been doing it for a decade. For a cloud experience 99% of customers are staying with, just GreenLake it. So let's rewind. Get everything as a service. Pay as you go, add capacity with a click, and have it managed for you. That's the cloud experience brought to your apps and data. Experience HPE GreenLake.
We are entering an age of insight, where data moves freely between environments to work together, powerfully from wherever it lives. A new era driven by next-generation cloud services. It's freedom that accelerates innovation and digital transformation. But it's only for those who dare to propel their business toward a new future that pushes beyond the usual barriers, to a place that unites all information under a fluid yet consistent operating model across all your applications and data, to a place called HPE GreenLake. HPE GreenLake pushes beyond the obstacles and limitations found in today's infrastructure because application entanglements, data gravity, security, compliance, and cost issues simply aren't solved by current cloud options. Instead, HPE GreenLake is the cloud that comes to you, bringing with it increased agility, broad visibility, and open governance across your entire enterprise. This is digital transformation unlocked, incompatibility solved, data decentralized, and insights amplified. For those thinkers, makers, and doers who want to create on the fly, scale up or down with a single click, stand up new ideas without risk, and view it all as a single, agile system of systems. HPE GreenLake is here, and all are invited.
Getting the
A very good morning to everybody. I hope that you're all well. My name is Anastasiou. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all this morning to this Hewlett Packard Enterprises, HPE, and they partnered together with Business Day Dialogues for this digital series, this digitized series in this world that we're living in, this crazy world that we're living in. And this is the world that we're living in, right? We're all working remotely, and this is how we are doing things. And I have a fantastic panel this morning that are going to be going through the things that we're going to be talking about, the cloud, the hybrid cloud. We want to hear from you and how you are adapting to this work from home and what your organizations are doing. What interesting things are you doing as well? So it's not just the panelists that are involved, it's you as well who are joining us. And in fact, right now, I would love everybody just to introduce themselves. There's a chat box on the side there where you can ask your questions. Just tell us who you are, where you're from, and tell us the temperature where you are at the moment. It's a warm day outside. I'm looking at Johannesburg, which is where I am. It was 28 degrees yesterday. We're expecting another 28, hopefully a bit of rain. But in the chat box, do introduce yourselves. I see Stephen Horosowski has introduced himself. Hello, Stephen, welcome. And we'd love everybody else to introduce themselves as well. So type into the chat box and just tell us who you are. But before we do anything, let me introduce my panelists today before I tell you about what we're going to be talking about. Firstly, Tumi Lobelo, the HPE Territory Manager, who is joining us today. Tumi, good morning to you. This is innovation is in your DNA, and you talk to businesses, you provide great solutions. And I love the fact that that empowerment of women is part of your DNA. Good morning to you, Tumi.
Good morning, Aki and everyone. Thank you so much for having me on this platform. I'm super excited to be sharing some insights about what we're doing.
Fantastic. And then Sarel, HPE Solutions Architect. He's been, I don't know, is it fair to call you a veteran without giving your age away? Because you've been in the business for 25 years and you've had different exposures to different technologies. But boy, oh boy, do you know the IT industry backwards. Sarel Nodia, HPE's Solutions Architect. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Aki, for that kind introduction. And yeah, we briefly discussed hair loss, so definitely a veteran. And thank you. I appreciate the kind introduction.
You're welcome, man. And then a man who doesn't need an introduction. You talk about veterans. He's been in the industry for over 60 years. Arthur Goldstuck, who's the MD of Worldwide Works. And he's an award-winning writer, has written so many books. When you talk about research that's been conducted in South Africa, this is the man. He writes for the Sunday Times. He's the founder of Worldwide Works. Arthur Goldstuck, good morning to you. Is it 60 years that you celebrate or 62 that you've been in the industry?
Good morning, Aki. It's already 80 years in COVID time. So yeah, I guess I've been around a while.
Oh, fantastic. Well, listen, it's really good to see you. I want to touch on some of the research you've been conducting, but isn't it a crazy world to our panelists? I mean, when you look at COVID-19 and the pandemic, and, you know, I've had the opportunity to talk to many CEOs, and when you go back to March, which feels like it was ages ago, 2020 must just go away. But when you look at the beginning of March and you look at when the first lockdown was announced, then we realized this is going to be more permanent than what we think. You know, the impossible for many organizations became possible, just like overnight, when you had to deploy millions of people to work remotely. It's all because of the cloud. Now, can you imagine if the cloud was not around, if the cloud was not around today? It's been around for a while, but you know, even if this had happened 5 years ago, I'm not sure that we would be so ready to deal with the rapid changes that have happened. And many organizations have had to accelerate whatever they had in the pipeline for 18 months down the line. They had to bring forward because they had this remote workforce working all over the place. So the cloud has certainly been the glue that's been holding business together and our personal lives together, really the world together, for allowing this business continuity. But, you know, the cloud is different forms. We talk about the hybrid cloud. We talk about, you know, different cloud providers, what's the right solution, et cetera, et cetera. But I want each of our panelists to go back to March of this year when this thing happened and relate your stories with regards to the cloud and technology and what your clients were saying to you, what you experienced personally. And let me start off with you, Sarel, because HPE has a long-standing tradition of really taking your customers together on this particular journey. I mean, you guys are instrumental in keeping your customers in business. So take me back to March with your customers and the calls that you were getting and how you and your department kind of transformed this digital transformation, because a lot of organizations literally turned on many things overnight.
Aki, everything you've said is so true, and it's such a true statement. And we're really seeing that, this acceleration that you spoke about, the acceleration of digital transformation strategies, amongst our companies. And interesting enough is this has also been identified by McKinsey and Company as a vital step for companies to weather and survive this COVID crisis as well. Yeah. And another yes, traditionally cloud adoption was seen, maybe as part of a company's digital transformation strategy, but this is not the case anymore. Cloud cloud adoption is not just about digital transformation anymore. And we've also recently seen that, due to the pandemic, these three major cloud service providers have actually received a massive shove. And this big shove can be attributed to three key areas. So there's that massive spike in remote work that you've already mentioned. Yeah. We're also seeing that customers, when we have discussions with them, are seeing a dramatic reduction in their CapEx expenditure. So there's some challenges around funding. And then businesses have to change to maintain their customer relations. And in fact, that same McKinsey report actually refers to these changes that are happening, and that McKinsey finding actually speaks of these changes that are happening are actually initiated by customers. So it's customers driving the way they want to interact, the way they want to procure, as well as the way they want to evaluate, products and services out there. And this is relevant to both business to business and business to consumer customers as well. And Aki, if I may, a couple of examples of where, there's been some massive innovation that has been forced by the pandemic. There's a pediatric healthcare provider by the name of Every Child Pediatrics. And working with their healthcare tool and services provider, which is a company called Bionicle Solutions, they've implemented a phenomenal cloud solution to allow them to use voice and video and chat components to implement telehealth initiatives, to enable their medical staff to still communicate with patients and assist with those medical conditions. So among those growth elements, Aki, that I mentioned, just in terms of that big shove, AWS within the first quarter of this year grew 34%. So that's quite substantial. And then another local player, Azure, grew at 59%, which is really unheard of. And then Google also saw some significant growth in the likes of 52%. And maybe I think Satya Nadella at the end of April probably had the most relevant statement that he made in terms of this pandemic. And what he said was that 2 years of digital transformation has literally happened in a period of 2 months. So to your point, we definitely seeing this acceleration happening.
Amazing stuff. It's extraordinary times. Now, to me, you dealing with customers, I don't even want to think of what your diary looked like in March of this year as we approached that lockdown. What was it like for you? And what are you seeing happening in the cloud landscape and organizations adapting to these new changes?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that happened, I think, with COVID is the change in mindset with regards to infrastructure and how we relate or how clients relate to their IT environments. The main thing that changed now is clients were like, we've got this whole situation where our workforce is at home and we have to be able to cater for them being at home. Yeah. So we talk about IoT, and a lot of clients had it on their strategy, right? something that they will adopt in the next 3 years, the next 5 years. But now it's something that had to be sped up. It was a reality. So we saw a lot of clients shifting to, please give me this now. Please ensure that you help me now. We had to literally get our specialists and our architects to be able to scope some of the solutions that our clients have adopted, especially when it comes to the cloud. We had to actually help them with their strategy. We have what we call a digital transformation workshop, and a couple of our clients, we had to actually engage on that because of the need for them to have a strategy and a plan to move to the cloud. The biggest thing, however, was the remote working element. So how do they enable their employees to work from home but still have a secure environment, right? So that all the devices that are connecting now to the network are not compromised. And a lot of our clients were not ready for this. So yes, we had a lot of work, sleepless nights. Sarel can tell you it was crazy. But I mean, we are excited that we were able to help some of our clients because at HPE, we have a global environment, we have global skills and global specialists. So it was not just local skills that we tapped into, but we're able to help our clients also by bringing in global experts to enable them to move from, infrastructure-based to more cloud-based remote working environment.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Tumi. By the way, I'm looking at our chat box and I'm talking about all the everyone that's joining us here today, wherever you're joining us from. It's fantastic to have you with us. Please do tell us what's the biggest challenge for you working remotely? What for you is the key concern working remotely? It's incredible some of the research that's been done, and people were talking about one of the biggest things that I see coming over and over again. You talk about the cloud, but it's something so random like a comfortable chair, right? Because everybody in an office environment has got a proper chair, etc. So everyone and many people talk about a chair, and many people talk about a second screen in terms of hardware and working remotely. Arthur Goldstuck, my friend, I mean, if you and I have been talking about technology and watching this progress that's happened so quickly over the last few years, we've traveled to many conferences together. If this had happened 5 years ago, we would be in dire straits. I think the cloud, even though it's been around for a while, wasn't mature enough 5 years ago. What are you seeing? What trends are you seeing when you talk about this COVID-19 pandemic and this massive transformation that's taken place by many organizations? The correlation that Sarel and Tumi are talking about, this massive cloud adoption in the last couple of months, well, I'm certainly seeing it in the technology shares, which are going crazy at the moment. But what do you see in the landscape happening, Arthur?
Aki, it's a very good point you make. If you look back to 2015, we conduct research on cloud in Africa every year or two, and we started that in 2013. And we saw a massive shift from 2013, when about half of the enterprises in Africa were using some form of cloud, merely adopting it, to 2015, when they started moving to it because they saw it as a competitive necessity. And then by 2018, all enterprises across Africa had adopted
Arthur, we've got a bit of
some form or other. But the real issue that we saw, or the real shift that we saw, was that it moved from merely embracing the cloud or adopting the cloud to using it on a strategic level. So you could say 2018 was the watershed for mere adoption, moving to actual strategic implementation. And 2020 is where we saw on a massive scale the reaping of the benefits of the cloud, particularly with the arrival of COVID-19. And I want to just go back to those tech stocks you mentioned and that Sarel referred to. It's a sad story, actually. One of my abiding memories of this period will be a column I wrote in the Sunday Times at the end of March, where I talked about the tech stocks that are going to thrive as a result of the pandemic. And they all tell a story, each of the ones that I mentioned. And there was Microsoft and Amazon, which clearly were going to benefit from accelerated adoption of the cloud. And sure enough, Amazon's share price is up 66%, Microsoft around 33%. And then entertainment stocks like NVIDIA, the gaming chip maker, up double since then, and Netflix, their entertainment stock, up around a half, and then finally a big one that benefited was Zoom in terms of video conferencing and remote working, and that is up threefold since then. The sad story is that while giving this advice, I didn't have the funds to invest myself in it. And I can't say I could kick myself because I didn't really have a choice in the matter. But it's very sad that I could identify what was going to explode and I couldn't do anything about it. Now, each of those depends heavily on the cloud. So gaming is cloud-based today. Entertainment, Netflix couldn't exist without the cloud. So you can see that both the cloud platforms and the major organizations that rely on the cloud to service the world during this time in entertainment, in remote working, all depend incredibly heavily on the cloud. And while the share prices may stabilize or decline slightly, it'll be a long time before they go back to what they were before the pandemic, because that need isn't going away.
No, it's absolutely fascinating. And Arthur, I mean, the cloud landscape has also changed dramatically. I mean, if you look at 5 years ago, for example, people had one cloud strategy, one cloud service provider. Today, we talk about a hybrid cloud strategy. We talk about using multiple cloud service providers, as you just said right now. So your traditional enterprise is not just having just one specific cloud service provider. They've got things all over the place, and it's the technology that's keeping it together. And I want to ask Sarel and Tumi this question as well, but are you seeing this trend? It's really moving. It's basically hybrid at the moment, isn't it?
Oh, Aki, Sarel, yeah, you're absolutely correct. It's most definitely a hybrid word. I just want to come back to something that Arthur said, because I think it's quite important. Referring back to those early pioneers, the Netflix of the world, and those things, and when you mention it, it almost I just got this idea that maybe those companies were actually instrumental in pioneering cloud and proving that it's a phenomenon that can actually work. It's a phenomenon that consumers are adopting at a rapid rate. Maybe just, I'll come back to your question, Aki, but, I just want to leave it with that, but maybe those guys were really pioneers in establishing cloud, 5 and 6 and 7 years into the future. So we're definitely seeing a move towards hybrid cloud. We are seeing that, when people adopt clouds from experience, initially it's a good idea to start with a single cloud service provider, just because it makes sense. Make life easy for yourself. Sort out the nitty-gritty stuff with a single cloud service provider. And once you're comfortable with the way cloud works and the mechanics around cloud and the operational changes that the organization had to go through, as well as the people in the organization, once the people have adapted to this new platform, then we see that it could make sense to adopt a second or even a third cloud service provider. But there's always that element of workloads that are going to remain on-prem within your own data center. And this is what we define at HPE as hybrid cloud. So it effectively spans all the way from the edge, wherever that organization's edge is, into their data center, which could have a private cloud instance as well, and then extending into public cloud. So we're definitely seeing that, and IDC actually confirms that adoption. So in a cloud pulse study that they did at the beginning of 2020, before the whole COVID epidemic became so relevant, they were actually seeing that on-premise solutions were shrinking, and they actually predicting a shrinkage in that area going into 2021 and 2022. But the growth areas, according to this company, is in on-premise private cloud, so cementing that concept of hybrid cloud, and then obviously growth spurts into the various cloud service providers. So definitely, yes, it's hybrid.
So I mean, when you talk about hybrid, when I first heard the terminology, I thought that they were talking a different language or smoking something. So when you talk about hybrid, right, you're using different solutions into one. What are those advantages of going to the hybrid, I would imagine flexibility is key here. But the key advantage is that you would say to your customers, going hybrid, this is why you should be doing this.
So flexibility is one of them. So it's all around flexibility, it's around agility, and then the third one is around speed. It's exceptionally quick to deploy new workloads in cloud because the infrastructure is there. There's no procurement processes that need to be followed. So you're absolutely right. It's speed, it's agility, and it's that flexibility that customers have. Which workloads are going to be moving into the cloud? That's done based on an assessment. We identify those workloads with the customer. We've actually developed what we call a right mix advisor methodology within HPE as an organization. We use this methodology in conjunction with the customer to identify which workloads are going to benefit from moving into the cloud. So that once we follow that methodology, it gives us a roadmap, and it'll allow us to identify these workloads make sense to run within your private cloud. And again, the idea, well, it's something that I firmly believe is that people go after the cloud because of the experience. Cloud is not a destiny. A cloud is an experience. It's this click go experience. It's this experience associated with I'm only paying for what I'm consuming. But we can deliver that same experience in the private cloud built on-prem. So same experience as proper cloud service providers environment, but deliver those flexibility, scalability, and speed experiences on-prem.
Fantastic. And Tumi, are you seeing the same thing with your customers in terms of the strategy that they're deploying? I'm very interested to hear how this is changing in terms of the hybrid approach and why specifically your customers are choosing a hybrid approach. What kind of feedback are you getting from your customers, Tumi?
Let's start here. So all clients, as you know, we've got an adoption model. So you have your early adopters and you've got your laggards, right? Those who will wait for everybody else to do something and then they'll come afterwards once it's tested. So our clients have been talking about, I think from my side, they've been expressing the need to have a multi-phased approach. So you cannot have all clients looking at the same approach. I'll give you an example. One of our clients in Europe, because they have predominantly public sector clients, chose the on-premise private cloud model because it serves them. They're talking about security, they're talking about scalability of the environment, but what they saw after that is that increased speed in deployments internally in the environment, and they were all able to save costs as well. Then you've got other clients who've got other workloads that are in the public cloud space. So every client has different needs. And in some of my clients that I've seen, and I mean, I haven't been in the industry, not like Arthur, for 15 years, I've seen the migration from the need to own and to hold information to the need to be more efficient and be quick to deploy and quick to actually get things done. We're talking about from the app space to the DevOps space. We've got some of our clients who've got developers in the environment, and the need for them to actually be able to operationalize some of those apps quickly is actually an issue. So COVID actually sped up, like I said earlier, that need to be able to get from a place where you are only looking at one approach, but now you're looking at multiple approaches, the hybrid model approach. And going back to the digital transformation workshop, not every client has the same strategy, and not every client should have the same strategy. You'll have clients who have various ways of actually approaching the environment. And some of my clients that we're helping right now to actually develop a cloud strategy are looking at certain environments.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Tumi. And I mean, Arthur, just coming back to what Tumi was saying, I mean, this obviously echoes the kinds of things that we are looking at in this particular landscape. And really where I'm going with this, Arthur, is it's difficult to monetize it now, but I've already seen some companies that since March, the aggressive cloud deployment that they've had to do, whether it's an e-commerce platform that they've had to deploy, whether it's creating more agility, whether it's adding business intelligence to their businesses. Many companies are starting to see the fruits of those efforts already coming through. And just to what Sarel was saying in terms of, when you look at the cloud and what it offers in terms of competitiveness, when you look at the agility, when you're looking at the flexibility that it does, and it really is the one thing that is going to make you as an enterprise, you as an organization more competitive and stand out above the rest. And I think anybody that's not having an aggressive cloud strategy right now is simply going to be left behind.
There's no question about that, Aki. In our latest cloud research, we found that the two biggest benefits reported by enterprises across Africa, and that's 8 African markets, was business efficiency and agility. And I don't know if you recall a couple of months ago when the Auditor General of South Africa, the sadly late Auditor General, released findings about the UIF debacle that they were having. His central criticism of the whole process was that the IT systems were not agile enough. And that was almost ignored by most of the media because they didn't understand the significance of that statement. But that really encapsulated the issue facing businesses on the one hand, and what the cloud can solve as a challenge to businesses on the other hand. So clearly the solution to that particular problem is the cloud, but not just the cloud for its own sake, rather the cloud as a strategic and operational platform on which to roll out new services. And to just give you another example, in the online retail world, for example, we've seen Checkers run rings around Pick n Pay and other online retailers because of their agile adoption, not just of the cloud, but also of their delivery strategy, delivering from store. So it looks like a pure play physical answer, but in fact, it depends heavily on that incredibly agile app, the 6060 app that draws on the cloud, that sits in the cloud and allows people not just to order online, but while the store picker is busy packing your trolley, you can actually track what they're doing live, and you can advise them or adjust what you are having put in the trolley. That's incredible. That is unprecedented in South Africa. That's impossible without the cloud.
Arthur, you and I have often spoken about education, and I was recently part of a seminar, a webinar where we had the universities of South Africa. So we're not even just talking, schools and high schools, for example. We're talking universities, and the fact that how learning has changed because of the pandemic, and how the cloud has really helped these students continue their year, albeit under difficult circumstances, and many kids who come from disadvantaged backgrounds, for example, don't necessarily have the technology. But the universities of South Africa that make up the universities of our country, they were talking about the fact that they've deployed almost 800,000 notebooks to students around the country, and that the average university students that were engaging on a month-to-month basis were using around about 20 petabytes of data to access remote learning, etc. We haven't even touched on the cloud and the impact that it's having on education, because at the bottom of all of this, there are enterprises and organizations that are using the cloud to provide these kinds of services. But it's extraordinary that we're talking about business, but yet the education side is just as equally as important. And as a country, I think that is something that we really need to address quite aggressively as well, because that in itself, we talk about businesses moving to the cloud, education is moving to the same place.
Aki, it's fascinating that you should mention education this week, because just yesterday, Naspers Foundry, the VC arm of Naspers in South Africa, announced they were investing 45 million rand in an online education platform called the Student Hub. And they wouldn't be investing in that if they didn't see the massive benefits and potential massive returns in the longer term. That's just one of many. Was it Get Smarter, I think, had a massive, I think, more than 100 million Rand investment from American venture capitalists, which was even before the pandemic arrived. So you can see that even without the pandemic, it's a huge trend. With the pandemic, it's equivalent to what we've seen in the cloud computing world in terms of potential growth.
Fascinating stuff. Sarel, and I hope we got you back to me because I want to ask you a question as well. And by the way, the audience, you are joining us today. Please get your questions coming in. Let us know of what you'd like to ask any of the panelists this morning, the challenges that you're experiencing. But when you look at the challenges that people have working from home, for example, Sarel, and what technology is doing to enable that, to unlock that particular value, what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing from a user perspective, from somebody that's working from home, for example? And I guess that poses a challenge for the enterprise as well. And the one thing that comes to mind automatically is security. Security is probably the Achilles heel of this entire pandemic from a digital point of view where you're working remotely. But the challenges that the remote workforce are facing, is it still coming down to connectivity, or is that not really a massive issue anymore? Because without connectivity, you have no access to the cloud.
I think from personal experience, I think a big challenge that the remote workers are facing is actually the ability to disconnect at the end of the day. So once the working day is finished, is to actually stop working and make that mental break between, I've got to go into a different mode now. So that's my experience is the inability to stop working at a predefined hour. But I think technology has really come a long way, but I also think that technology has been there for a very long time to support people in terms of remote working capabilities. And I'm going to throw a name out there, the likes of a Citrix, who've been delivering these remote capabilities for decades already. So I think the technology is exceptionally mature. I think our local area network or bandwidth, irrespective of whether it's broadband or some open serve fiber or even a traditional connection, I don't think connectivity is a challenge anymore for a certain segment of the workforce. I do believe that unfortunately, not the entire workforce is privileged enough to be in an area where there's good, stable, reliable connectivity. So for one segment of the workforce, I don't think there's challenges in terms of connectivity, but I do believe that there is another segment of the workforce that are suffering in terms of connectivity. And the reason I say that is I want to hook into Arthur's comment and your comment up here around education. I'm fortunate enough to have 2 kids at university, and they are being remotely lectured. They remotely write exams, which saves me fuel money, So and those things are working. But I understand as well, from the other side of the argument, there's a phenomenal amount of students that don't have luxury to that kind of connectivity to be able to attend these remote lectures. So I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword, if I may call it that. Some people are in a position where they benefit, but I think there's a large proportion of the population that struggles to initiate some sort of a remote capability, even though the company can provide. I think, yes, security is a big challenge out there, but again, Citrix and remote desktop solutions can significantly circumvent security challenge that we have today. The technology is mature. We're talking to a lot of customers. We're actually engaging with one government department today, to assist them in defining their, remote solution. And again, there's various options that this particular organization is looking at. Are we just going to throw laptops at them? Are we looking at doing this in a little bit more of a clever fashion? Remote desktops, VDI sessions, centralized security, predefined profiles, authentication, and all those different things. So I'm going to end by saying the technology is mature. The networks are mature. I just think it's access to the maturity of those things that is potentially still a stumbling block.
Oh, interesting. Hey, Tumi, welcome back. It sounds like you had a bit of a connection issue. As we were talking about connectivity and the challenges that people working from home, this wasn't set up like this, Tumi. This is not we didn't set it up like this to demonstrate.
A live demonstration, Aki.
But to me, it's interesting. We're all in business in one way or another, but you're selling to businesses, but you're also a user of business services, right? What's the challenge for you working from home that you've seen? Because connectivity is obviously an issue. I'm not sure if you have children, if they're connecting, etc. But Sarel raised some very interesting points, and I think the one big challenge that people aren't talking about is that digital burnout that he mentioned, and not knowing when to stop. I think in April, I heard some horror stories of like 14 hours a day spending on video conference calls. But digital burnout is obviously big. What are the challenges you're seeing?
I absolutely relate. And at HPE, from a culture and workforce perspective, we've had to come up with ways in terms of supporting our workforce to ensure that they're enabled better. So you at home, you're working with your family. I don't have kids, but it was literally from morning to evening every single day. And it was also, made worse by the fact that our clients were now, in need of certain services that we needed to make sure that we deliver immediately. So it was not because you were digital burnout, you just had so much work to do all of a sudden. It was because we were going through a pandemic and there was a need. And for us, our clients come first. So we had to come together and look at how we can actually get all resources together to support them. So personally, it was a very big challenge, and the dress code was also a challenge. So you had to wake up 5 minutes before the meeting and go to the meeting just because, sometimes you don't have a video on. So you had to get creative. And it was so with some of our clients right now. But the challenges were also traveling during that time for our engineers. So in order to support the clients, migrating and upgrading some of the environments. Obviously, we are talking about networking, storage, and compute. We had to accelerate some of the deployments and the migrations, and having our engineers deployed during that time. Obviously, we had to have certification of that. It was very challenging, but I do believe that it forced us to view work differently. I mean, we at HPE now, we're talking about the edge, right? Working remotely, enabling our employees to be able to work from home. And that's what our clients are doing right now. And that's what I said earlier, remote working is now a thing. Traveling is going to be cut down significantly. I mean, Bill Gates even said that over the next couple of years, 50% of business travel will be cut down. So it affects other industries as well. However, productivity will increase. So we're talking about efficiencies that will increase. We have people, now we need to teach people how to have a balance. You need to now put in your calendar time for lunch. You need to now put in your calendar time to just breathe, or else you will have that digital burnout where you move from meeting after meeting. But at HPE, we are teaching our clients right now on how to create a culture of remote working and supporting our businesses to be able to ensure that employees don't suffer from burnout. And I've actually suffered from that as well. And we've got other employees in our other businesses that have suffered from that.
No, we're all in the same boat there. To me, great insights there, Arthur. Just coming back to your research, I found your research quite interesting, and I've been, watching it over the years and how it's evolved and the different answers that come up. And when you ask in the last research, the main benefits of the cloud, 63% of your respondents said business efficiency, agility, operational flexibility was 53%. Then came customer service at 45%, time to market, the speed, the cost savings only 33%, interestingly. Platform for service innovation was down at 25%. Then scalability and international expansion were further down. But are you seeing any changes in those research numbers over the years? And I would imagine that customer service and the customer experience, the value that the cloud unlocks in that department is going to be one particular answer that I see is going to be increasing even further over the next few years and research that you do, because customer experience is everything for enterprise.
Aki, that's a good observation. It's very much sector specific and the kind of business involved. So previously, one of the elements that came up very strongly was time to market. But that also differed from country to country. So for example, it was more important in South Africa than in Nigeria. But today, time to market is less important because it's almost as if that has no longer or it is no longer a differentiator. So some of the very basic benefits of the cloud that were differentiators in the past are not differentiators today. And that's really the difference. So where customer service becomes a differentiator in specific industries like retail, for example,
Yes.
then it becomes a massive differentiator, and retailers will talk that aspect up far more than in other sectors. So that is sector dependent. So when you start analyzing a sector by sector, you start seeing very interesting nuances in terms of which elements are more important to what kind of organizations. Another example being access to international markets. If you're not focused on international expansion, then that's going to be irrelevant to you. But for any multinational organization, that becomes a critical element. And to just use the world's most obvious example, Netflix, access to international markets is in fact almost the reason for their existence today, strategically speaking. Without that, they can't have growth. So far more benefits emerge out of each of those benefits. Those are just the underlying benefits, and then you can unpack them again, industry by industry.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see in your next research what impact all the data centers have had. Now, we've had a few already for a while, but the likes of Microsoft, and there's just even more service providers coming in to the country using it as the main platform and pivot into the rest of the continent. It's going to be interesting to see once that matures, because I think that the Microsoft data centers, for example, aren't more than 2 years old. So we'll really see those benefits in the next research, which is going to be fascinating to see. But Sarel, coming back to you, many respondents on here, enterprises, they've made adoptions and they've changed a couple of things. They've said, we need to deploy this particular cloud strategy. This is what we're going to be doing. At what point, and I guess so you should be doing this now, is doing an audit or reflecting back on where you've come to from March to here with this rapid adoption, looking at your current infrastructure and asking yourselves, what do we do next as an enterprise with our cloud strategy? How does an enterprise or business sit back and relax? What kind of questions should they be asking themselves in terms of what to do next to make sure that for the next 3 years, that strategy is in line with what's happening globally?
Good question, Aki. I'm probably going to put a different spin on this. Again, it's my opinion. My opinion is that companies should not have a cloud-only strategy. I'm of the opinion that a company should have a digital transformation strategy of which cloud is an element. So I think continue developing the digital transformation strategy. And what a digital transformation strategy essentially does is it allows that particular organization or company's customers to have a better experience. So it's all about giving a customer a granted experience in terms of communicating with the company, procuring their goods or services, getting issues resolved. So all those elements should form part of that digital transformation strategy. So once, in my opinion, workloads have been moved to a cloud service provider and they're up there and they're stable. That's one element of a digital transformation strategy that, could potentially be ticked. There's so many other elements that form part of that strategy that I think people can still develop and build on and improve on, making sure that the right data is in the right place at the right time. Start looking at using potentially AI and machine learning or analytics platforms to analyze how your customers are consuming and buying and maybe potentially complaining about certain things. Identify those elements and use those analytics capabilities to take that digital transformation strategy even to a next level. So continue building out the digital transformation strategy as opposed to just focusing on getting things in the cloud. So that would be my advice. Cloud is definitely a component of digital strategy, but it's not everything. So focus on the digital strategy.
Yeah. Okay, now that's interesting. And to me, are you kind of seeing the same kind of thing from your clients in terms of what they're going to be doing next?
Yes, it's actually very much tied to what Sarel has said. Our big key solutions right now that we are driving as HPE is Aruba, right, in the networking space. So that team has been heavily involved in ensuring that connectivity within our client's environment is not just your normal connectivity, but it's got intelligence behind it. So we're talking about data analytics. And if we're talking about cloud, we're also talking about how do you make sure that the data that you have in your environment is structured properly. So we've got what we call blue data, we've got HPE Esmeralda, we've got technologies that allow our clients to be able to manage their their data effectively. Right now, when we're talking about data, we know data is the new currency, right? And when we move to the cloud, everybody is looking at how they can manage that information and data better. So the biggest focus for our clients right now is to ensure that we have seamless environments. We make sure that the skills behind that are supporting the environments or the partners that are supporting the environments are properly skilled to make sure that they transition to the next level. Now, if you're looking about data analytics, we've also got governance and compliance. There's a lot of subsets that clients are looking at right now. And companies like ourselves are in the process of helping them transition from one end to the next. But like I said earlier, it's not just about that. It's about how do you ensure that productivity increases? How do you ensure that you save costs, especially right now during COVID time or post-COVID time, as clients are looking at, we enable our clients to operate better. As right. moving from CapEx. So if you've got a need, now you take your capital expenditure and you throw it into infrastructure, to moving to more as a service model. We have our flagship GreenLake, the cloud service model, where now we're looking at OpEx. So we're looking at pay-as-you-use models, which is actually right now what I'm seeing as a trend in our client space. They're moving away from CapEx models to pay as you use, because it allows them to grow and scale better instead of, maybe sometimes wrongly projecting their growth within their technology environment.
Great stuff. Okay, guys, so we're going to take a couple of questions. I'm also conscious of time as we're approaching the 10 o'clock way. But a question for you, Arthur, and this is coming from Josh. Now, you've done a lot of research on SMEs in the sector. How are small businesses embracing cloud technology, and how they're struggling with the cost and keeping up with the big guys adopting cloud strategy? What's your question for small and medium-sized enterprises, Arthur?
We've actually been asking that question in our SME survey every couple of years. Coincidentally, the very first time we conducted that survey in 2003, HP was the sponsor. So it goes back a long way. And we began looking at cloud adoption by SMEs about a decade ago. And it was very slow at first, but we saw a rapid speeding up. And a big issue we discovered was that most SMEs were using the cloud without realizing they were using it. So, for example, they would be using Gmail and not realizing that they're actually using cloud email. And gradually, I think as awareness dawned that they are in the cloud, they began adopting it more aggressively. This year in particular, those that weren't in the cloud have realized that they can't survive without it. So the pandemic will accelerate SMEs' uptake of cloud as well. And then there's one other element. I don't know if any of you saw an announcement yesterday from the Reserve Bank and the Payments Association of South Africa and a couple of other key payments bodies. They announced that officially from the 31st of December, checks will no longer be accepted in South Africa. And that was, in effect, the death of physical, touchable transactions in South Africa and moving to digital cloud-based transactions. That symbolic move, I believe, will also wake up the rest of SMEs to the fact that the world has gone digital. So we have seen acceleration this year. We have seen continued growth in uptake over the past decade. But what comes next is a true SME embrace of the cloud in South Africa and across Africa.
That's fascinating. Here's a question, a great question coming in from Daniel Naude. Your suggestions for cloud adoption for a LMS, both for user access and cybersecurity. Sarel, what is your suggestion for cloud adoption for LMS for both user access and cybersecurity?
I think it can be done. Again, I'm not that familiar with those type of use cases. My recommendation would be is to approach the three main cloud service provider and evaluate their services. I would also say always have a look at the T's and C's and the SLAs and consider what the cloud service responsibility is, and always consider and be aware of what your responsibilities are when you're looking at migrating any workload into the cloud. So apologies, I'm not that familiar with LMS workload, so I'm going to answer it in a very generic fashion. I hope that it will be sufficient. I do apologize.
Yes. Well, just on that, a question from Keith has come for you as well, Sarel, about security and potential loss of backup data in the cloud. Is that an issue in the modern day cloud?
Yes, most definitely. And again, I've had several conversations with potential customers, when I say potential, looking at embarking on the cloud, and backup and data protection is something that we always discuss. Again, make sure that when you choose a cloud service provider, you understand what their responsibilities are and what is expected of yourself. So we always recommend, to our customers to still run their own backup protection cycle, just in case something potentially, big happens at a cloud service provider. But Aki, it goes beyond that. There's always the possibility for some ransomware to affect a cloud-based workload. That possibility is always there. And there, I believe it is it's the company's responsibility to manage that level of protection. We know what's happening. It's happening in South Africa, and it's happening locally more frequently as well. So it's up to customers to justify, we can lose that, or we can be without that data for such a long time. And this is where defining recovery point and recovery time objectives are so vital. And in my opinion, it's your data. It is your responsibility to make sure that you protect yourself, to meet those recovery point and time objectives.
And let me not remind us all about POPI. You've got what is it now? Another 7-8 months. POPI. You've got another 7 months or so to get all our houses in order, because I think it's June 2021.
21 July.
21 July 2021. So we've got literally a few months to go. And I'll tell you what, you don't want to take any chances there, having the wrong stuff. Arthur, a question from Ian has come in, just talking about this rapid adoption of the cloud and technology and that sort of thing. Is it going to further divide people when you look at the digital divide that we have and the population? You look at the unemployment in South Africa. Is technology going to be a unifier, or is it going to divide us further?
It's a very good question. It's one of my beliefs that it's in fact increasing the digital divide, because those left on the other side of the divide prior to the pandemic have not really been brought across. So we've seen data prices come down. We've seen the networks reporting massive increase in data usage as a result, and therefore increased profit as well. But we're not seeing them come to the party in terms of bringing people across the digital divide. It does need an integrated approach from government, from business, and from the telecommunications operators, because data is the key to crossing that divide. But it's also an educational issue. If you don't have educational underpinning for becoming part of the digital revolution, it doesn't matter how much data you are given, that's not going to bring you across. And unfortunately, we saw, particularly in education, come back to Sarel's favorite point, we saw in education that those who could embrace remote learning thrived, or at least survived in this time. Those who couldn't were completely left outside of the digital revolution. And both education and health will be the flashpoints for highlighting the extent of the digital divide. And it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Oh, interesting stuff. A question for you, Tumi, from Jessica, as we approach 10 o'clock, and I'm enjoying this chat so much, guys. You know, a question from Jessica says there's specific components that need to be outsourced to the cloud. What is your advice on the strategy to include, you know, should the strategy be to include the entire IT infrastructure? And, you know, Jessica says she's a bit nervous because of the security risks doing this. What is your advice to Jessica in terms of her answer to me?
It's actually a great question. We deal with this all the time. When we assist our clients to go through the journey of transformation and transformation to the cloud, we always look at multiple components. First and foremost, we need to decide what applications and workloads are going to move to the cloud. And that happens through different processes. So we look at what you're doing currently, so your current workloads and your future requirements. It is not as simple as we put everything on private cloud or everything on public cloud. It is based on the needs of the client, and it's based on operational needs of the client. I'll give you an example for what we did for one of our clients. We actually sat down and looked at where they were going, obviously their strategy, and they were looking to obviously go and create a more development house in the environment, and that workload they wanted to house internally, and the other workloads they wanted to house in the cloud. So how you decide will be based on your strategy as an organization. It will be based on what you're trying to do in terms of how you move forward in the ecosystem or life cycle. We do have processes, or like I said, we do have ways of helping the client transition from where they are to where they're going. It's not a clear-cut answer, but what I would advise Jessica is to say, what is your strategy? Where are you going? Where are you now? And how can you, what is it that you need to transition to the next level? We talked about connectivity, we talked about data. What is it that needs to remain in control? In financial services, we know a lot of the applications remain in-house. For security reasons, which we talked about earlier, but some of the applications don't actually need to remain in-house. So it's something that some companies like us can actually come in and help you decide and look at. And we've seen some companies got burned who said, we want to go public cloud, or we want to and take all the workloads to public cloud, and then, you know, reverse that decision, which was a very painful decision. So it needs to be a very well thought out approach.
Yeah. Don't be nervous is the message that Tumi is giving you. Nothing to be nervous about. Guys, we've come to the end, Sarel, but I want to give each of you 30 seconds to respond, and just to, you know, let's share your closing thoughts on the discussion today. You know, words of wisdom that people can take away with them today as we have this discussion, and we just wrap up, because we've covered so many interesting angles to this cloud adoption, and clearly the strategy that you've all been talking about is very clear and abundant. But 30 seconds from you in closing, or each of you, in terms of your closing thoughts and advice that you can give to the people joining us today at this Hewlett Packard Enterprise HPE Business Day Dialogue digitized series. Sarel, let's start off with you. What's your closing thoughts?
I think my closing thoughts very quickly. Security seems to be a big question. Don't be concerned around security. In general, the cloud service providers' security capabilities significantly outreach what any other organization is doing out there. I mean, they have to. So don't be too concerned about security. Just do your homework. As with anything, 90% of the work is going to be the upfront homework, the planning, and 10% is going to be the real grafting. It's an exciting time to living. Work on your digital transformation strategies. Keep in mind cloud, and remember, cloud is not a destination. It really is all about an experience. And thanks for having us on this call, Aki.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure. Cloud is not about the experience. It's not about the destination. It's about the experience. I love it. I love it, Sarel. Arthur, no doubt you're going to be featuring a lot of this stuff in your next research, but what are your closing thoughts as we wrap up this particular dialogue?
I want to go back to that key comment from Satya Nadella that in 2 months we saw 2 years worth of digital transformation. That was back in May, and that sentiment was echoed by people like AWS and various other key players in the cloud. If that was 2 years in 2 months, imagine how much more we've seen since then, but also how much more is still coming. It's only just beginning.
Hold on tight is what you're saying, and get onto this strategy, because, you know, and Arthur, it's incredible that if you look at this incredible growth, anybody that's not on that trajectory of journey, your history, you're not going to survive the next 5 years. You're going to become redundant, and you're going to be the blockbuster videos of business in the next few years, even sooner, not even years. We're talking months in terms of strategy. Tumi, your closing thoughts. You gave some great advice today, but wrapping up, your thoughts and advice on the discussion that we've been having today.
Closing thoughts, cloud is key. Cloud is an enabler, but cloud is not everything. So a lot of clients, or a lot of people are afraid of this concept, but when it's done right, it is definitely beneficial to your environment. We've seen the big players, your Microsofts, your IBMs, your HPEs investing in this. We've seen data centers springing up everywhere. So it is a reality. Let's make use of it, and let's partner.
Awesome stuff. Fantastic. Tumi Lobelo, Territory Manager for Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Arthur Goldstuck, the Managing Director at Worldwide Works. Sarel Naude, Solutions Architect at HPE. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us here at this HPE series, partnering with Business Day Dialogues Digitized series. We hope you've enjoyed the content. We hope you found it informative. I've certainly learned a lot about it. And every one of these series and every one of these discussions, I often go away with something in my mind that I've learned that you can apply to a modern day business enterprise. And certainly the cloud is the one that's been keeping everything together, the glue behind business. And when you hear Arthur's comment about how much we've done in just the short space of time, what Satya Nadella said, this transformation, this speed is here to stay. Have a fantastic day, everybody. We hope to see you next at one of the Business Day Dialogues.